Welcome everybody to KFWE shopping list. Now I want to talk about some of the ingredients going in our dish. In our dish is a beef fat, seared ribeye with a buckwheat crepe filled with mushroom Duxelles, finished with a huckleberry gastrique. Now some of the ingredients you might think, wow, those are going to be hard to source, but you should be able to find them, guys. So the recipe might look complicated, but it's 4 small little recipes combined together to make one dish. Like for instance, you can consider like if you're doing mashed potatoes and vegetables with the steak, it's 3 recipes and a sauce, 4 recipes. Same concept, guys, okay? So let's talk about the crepe. So I broke down this shopping list in 4. So we got the crepe here. Buckwheat is the main ingredient. So we didn't want the average old crepe, but that's okay. That's fine if you want to do that. We wanted to have some texture and a little bit more flavor. When you get buckwheat pancakes or buckwheat flour, to me it tastes more savory. We want to achieve that savoriness. So buckwheat flour might be the hardest thing you need to find for that, but it's really easy to find now. Oat milk, what I use for it, of course you could use a non-dairy milk, almond milk or soy milk might be fine. That's going to be the hardest ingredients to find for your crepe. Now I know Geffen supplies a really great oat milk. Check it out, look for that. The mushroom Duxelles. Now my favorite mushroom is going to be the hen of the woods. The reason why, it's meatiness, it's earthiness, the perfume when you cook it, to me tastes like steak. So we wanted to kind of create those aromas when we're sauteing mushrooms. Now a great substitute would be a little bit of portobellos. I would say use the bigger ones, peeled, roasted hard. Those are easily sourced too as well, guys. Now we added a special kick it up a notch ingredient, and that's black truffle. So we're in that season where black truffle should be easy to source right now. Now if you can't find black truffle, I would use a little truffle salt or a little bit of truffle oil, but be very, very cautious. Don't over season because you'll kill the dish, okay? So when it comes to black truffle, use as much as you like if you're using fresh. When it comes to truffle salt, truffle oil, less is best, okay? All right, guys. Now, the other 2 we have going on our shopping list. Now let's talk about meat, ribeye, okay? You want to make sure, and even when you come here in Terceur and we say we're going to cut you a 12-ounce steak, a lot of the times it ain't 12 ounce. The reason why is because you need a good 1.5 inches, a nice thick steak to get a perfect sear and even cooking. So when it comes to a ribeye, make sure you get a nice thick 1 inch to 1.5 inch steak. Try to talk to your butcher. If you can't find, that's fine as well. Just be cognizant when you're cooking that steak, okay? Let's not sear really hard. Let's sear really hard and really fast if it's a thin ribeye. Now, I can't eat personally. Believe me, I'm a big guy, a 16-ounce ribeye. So if you were cooking a steak that's 16 ounces or a pound more, that's, I think, sufficient for at least 2 people to eat, guys. So plenty to share. And when you see the video, you'll see us cut up the steak. Now, make sure you have good marbling. Make sure the cap is also there. It all depends if you like a fatty steak or a non-fatty steak, to each his own. Now, the hardest, I think, out of all the ingredients, because I think you can get black truffle anywhere, is beef tallow. So beef tallow is rendered beef fat. So any butcher shop would have beef tallow. If you can't use beef tallow, that's fine. Just use a really high cooking temp oil. Grapeseed oil works good. Canola oil works good. But you're gonna get more of a flavor, a beef flavor that I want you guys to achieve. That's gonna go crazy with everything else. Just remember, when we get that pan hot, pull it off the pan and then add the fat, the beef tallow, because we don't want to burn the fat. All right. So it's like, pretend it's butter, but of course we can't cook with butter here. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye on how high you're cooking. You want to get the high heat, but at the same time, once you put that fat on there, turn down the heat, put your steak on, and baste. All right. Now the last thing is our gastrique. So gastrique is basically any fruit with acid and sugar. So it's a caramelized sugar, sauce. We didn't put too much sugar because the huckleberries are sweet enough. Now huckleberries are a wild berry that you can get perfect around this time. Very seasonal ingredients. You can get them frozen. You can get them shipped. You can probably find them on Amazon, believe it or not. Huckleberries, if you can't get huckleberries, I'd say more along the lines of blackberries is going to be better than a blueberry. Blackberry is going to have more of a robust, deeper flavor. Huckleberry has this aromas of sweetness, but at the same time has earthiness. And it reminds me of forest. So that was the whole point, is showcasing this. And it's almost like wine when you eat it. It's a perfectly good seasoned berry. I'm sorry. Last thing with that is we want to use BH cap. So a cap that you can drink on the table every day, and you don't want to use a cheap wine when you're making a sauce, guys. So you want to make sure you have a decent wine that you would drink on a daily. So BH cab is going to be that other secret ingredient for that, okay? But I think here we go. So we got your crepe batter, which is your buckwheat again, and you got to make sure you got to find some oat milk. You have your mushroom Duxelles, which is going to be hen in the woods mushrooms in black truffle, hopefully. Your steak, 1.5 inch thick, right? A little beef tallow if you can. And then your last thing, your huckleberry gastrique, guys. If it turns to blackberry gastrique, it's okay. So we talked about mise en place, we talked about our shopping list. Now let's talk about tools. Tools, believe it or not, are part of that mise en place. So let's go over a couple tools that I think you should have. Now, if you want to have success, you're gonna gather all this stuff before we even start, a day ahead, 2 days ahead. And I think there's a couple of things that you can make actually a day ahead, guys. So let's talk about tools. First thing you're gonna need probably is a blender to make the crepe batter. You don't need so necessarily. If you do, that's fine. 2 other items. You need at least a crepe pan or a non-stick pan just to cook the crepes in. I suggest a small little rubber spatula just to flip them. You should be fine with that. All right. When it comes to the mushroom Duxelles, you want to have a nice cast iron or even heavy bottom pan just to saute the mushrooms so you get some deep color. I believe we're gonna toss those mushrooms in oil first, and we're gonna pre-roast them on a half sheet pan. So if you have a small half sheet pan, that'd be great. And then we're gonna bring it back to that pan. Now, the only thing is, when we chop up the mushrooms, you could chop them by hand. I prefer you guys use a small food processor, not a blender, because the blender is gonna make sauce. We don't wanna make sauce. We wanna make a nice mushroom Duxelles. Okay, now it comes to the steak. When I said heavy bottom pan, again, this is very important. So we use here a blue steel pan, which holds heat and really cooks evenly and doesn't get too hot, burns or smokes. My suggestion to you is either a nice heavy bottom pan or a cast iron skillet is gonna be your best, okay guys, to cook that steak. Now, also important is when we finish cooking that steak in the oven to roast it and to get to that perfect temp, try to find a half little sheet pan with a rack. A rack is important. Why? Because we want to make sure hot air circulates around the steak and it cooks even, okay? Also, when you pull out the steak, it's gonna rest on that and continue cooking, okay? So half little pan or a rack is very important. Now, last but least, saute pan for your sauce, high-walled saute pan, so you gotta make sure that wine when we pour it doesn't overflow. Other than that, maybe a good nice spoon just when you're basting the beef fat over the steak, and that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Looking forward to see you on KFWV.